And all right, we're recording. We're recording. This is Chris O'Neill from Ninth Level Games, and I'm speaking tonight with Dave Chalker and Brett Meyers about Thunder Road Vendetta, the role-playing game, and the journey from adapting it from the board game of their design. Brett and Dave, would you guys like to introduce yourselves to the folks at home? We may have people join us. We did have an audience, but Discord may have eaten them. I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Brett, you want to go first? Or I could lose them and I'll go first.
Or maybe Brett got eaten by Discord.
Yeah. Maybe it's just eating everybody.
It's a slow wormhole. Eventually, It's just going to be me screaming into the darkness.
It's like that Next Generation episode.
We keep getting smaller and smaller. People keep disappearing. Who are you talking about?
It's always been just me in this Discord.
Right.
So yeah, I'm Dave Chalker. I'm a freelance game designer and co-designer of both the Thunder Road Vendetta board game with Brett and on the team of designers for the RPG adaptation. We worked with Restoration Games to put out and develop the Thunder Road Vendetta board game and all but one of its expansions. The most recent one we didn't do much on, but we developed all the other ones for the initial launch, and have been working on that for years now.
It does seem like for years. All right, Brett, are you there? Brett. All right, Dave, why don't you tell us a little bit about the initial... So, for those that don't know, Thunder Road is a game from the 1980s. That Restoration, in its reason d'etre, is to take great games that existed a long time ago and give them a modern home, redeveloping where necessary, taking these games and bringing them back for a modern audience. So, how did you get involved in that, Dave?
Yeah, so Brett and I have been going to the same game design conventions for many a year now, and there was a convention we were both at where Brett said, "Hey, I've got all these house rules and redevelopments and stuff for Thunder Road, and I love Thunder Road. We played it and super exciting, and being able to customize your cards and stuff were in Brett's prototype that I played." And at one point I was like, "Hey, I don't know, because of all the license stuff, if we'll be able to do anything on it, but I'd love to work on this with you to make kind of a new version." And a bit after that, we talked to the Restoration folks after we had been tinkering around with it for a while, and it was kind of half. They saw we were working on it, and we approached them kind of in both directions, and they agreed to take a look at it and like what they saw, but had a whole list of things that they wanted us to work on, especially working with Restoration. They don't want just like a coat of paint on it, to extend the metaphor further. They want a brand new engine so that it holds up to be a game that feels like a modern game, but still evokes all the stuff you loved about the original.
It has to capture what was great about the original game, but it has to be a game that you can hold up against modern games and say this is a good game.
Exactly. And
Brett, I'm seeing you coloring it. Brett, are you here now? Are you?
I think so. Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Okay, good.
Brett, why don't you introduce yourself here? I had Dave talking a little bit about the history of this, so we'll catch you up into the conversation.
Right. I'm back in. So, what do you need from me?
Introduce yourself to the folks.
Introduce myself. Yes, I'm Brett Meyers. I'm primarily a board game designer. This is the first role-playing game that I've worked on, which was very exciting. But I've been designing board games for a while now, just freelance board game design. And the Thunder Road Vendetta role-playing game is the first role-playing game I've worked on. So
Dave said that you had house rules for Thunder Road. So you had your 1980s original set, and you were still tinkering with it.
Oh yeah, 100%. I have 3 or 4 original sets, kind of in various parts because I've cut things up and put them back together again. I find that the original Thunder Road was such a minimalist sort of design that it was really kind of ripe for tinkering.
Absolutely,
it's just a very simple design, and it was just kind of begging for just like a game designer like myself just to tinker with it, or anybody really could. It has been, I'm sure there are dozens of other little house rules out there for different sorts of things. It was something I had been working on and off for a number of years, and like Dave said, we kind of met up at one of the cons that we both go to, and we both had ideas that we liked, and started playtesting things together, and it just sort of clicked pretty well. So, yeah.
So then you presented it to Restoration. Restoration came back, said, "Hey, we need some of these other pieces." They got involved.
Right. Rob, we talked to Rob Davio, who's their lead designer, and he is a man of exquisite vision, and his guidance for us. They liked our initial pitch, and they liked where we were going with it. But Rob's kind of his notes on our original design were like, make it cinematic, make it more cinematic, make it more exciting, make crazy stuff happen. Essentially, was what he said, and just kind of go wild. There was no sacred cows for this game, except for a couple of things. We had to have the moving board, and we had to have choppers. Otherwise, he said everything else can go. We have to have, that's the 2 key characteristics of the game that you need to keep. It's the moving board, or the movable board, and the choppers in the game, and everything else, we could kind of take or leave or modify to our whim, and the whole goal was to make it cinematic, like you're in Mad Max Fury Road or a Fast and Furious movie or something crazy like that.
Yeah, I would really like to see a Fast and Furious version. That would be great.
There was one point where we said, hey, the helicopters, they don't really make sense as helicopters, and there's no reason to have the pieces because, you just kind of take a shot at something that's on the board, and we wouldn't need the pieces. And Rob was like,
oh, no.
No. Yeah, people love those little spinny helicopters that you can flick to have the rotor blades. So keep those in. We're like, all right, no problem.
The spinning blade. Those were. I always say those are the original fidget spinners back in the 80s.
Yeah, and I mean, it's such a memorable piece of the game, right? Like like you said, the 2 things that you remember from the board game that I remember from being a kid playing it were. The dropping the backboard, dropping the last board, the ultimate and most satisfying thing when you're buddy, and it's still satisfying in the new game. Like when you get to look someone in the eye and just throw all their pieces on the ground, it's so good. And the little helicopters with the spinning blades. So as our first RPG forward thing, one of the first things that I had asked you guys, I'd asked Dave about was, well, what's up with the helicopters? Because from a story perspective, it's the biggest stretch. Everything else makes perfect sense. And Dave said to me, he's like, well, they're in like a guild, and they just you have to pay for them.
The Sky Clan. Yeah, they know the secret of flight and don't share it with anybody else. So.
Which is why they'll shoot you. Even your
Right.
own piece will
Yeah.
shoot you if you get too close, which I just love. I
Right.
think that's super great.
They're not part of your gang. They're just a bunch of dudes in helicopters who like to blow stuff up.
Dudes with
And it's
helicopters that
definitely
like to.
not just a gameplay thing that we retroactively figured out a reason for.
There's no retconning involved. That was how it was from the beginning, I swear.
So the story then how we get from a restoration game to a role playing game is also features a convention. Dave came up to me at Unpub a bunch of years ago and was like, "Hey, with the success of Return to Dark Tower and your relationship with Restoration, do you guys think that they would do a role playing game? Would be interested?" And I said, "Would you be interested in working on that game?" And Dave was like, "Well, that's why I'm asking you." And I was just like, "All right, let's talk about this," because we had a great time working with Restoration. On Return to Dark Tower, which was definitely a place in my heart, a thing that I always cared about. And always loved Thunder Road. Got excited when I heard that they were making Thunder Road. Got excited when I heard you guys were working on Thunder Road. Because I knew that you guys were going to do a good job. But then with Dave, when you asked me about the role playing game, what was the motivation there? Like, where was the first time you were like, I should go talk to ninth level?
Yeah. I mean, it was primarily because you'd done the Return to the Dark Tower adaptation that I really enjoyed. But, yeah, and I've told this story elsewhere, but, I was at a convention where a game designer friend of mine was doing a car combat kind of RPG. And this was when we were kind of in the early stages of talking to Restoration. And I was like, I'm going to file this idea away for later. And, that game designer Morgan Ellis, he ended up passing away a while later. But, it's one of those ideas where it's like, yeah, there's really not a lot out there in the role playing game space that's, this kind of thing. There's, like, I played the kind of Car Wars.
I would say there's Auto Duel.
Yep.
And there's Octane by Jared Sorensen.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it.
And they all sort of have a different vibe to them, the like kind of core car combat of it is more baked into that, whereas this is, not that Thunder Road itself is like a prime license that, billions of people know about, but like that Mad Maxy feel, but, through the filter of, what we've established in the board game, it just felt like there wasn't a lot out there that was really about, the chases and your wasteland settlement and, these different sizes of cars being important and, your like the vehicle you own being a core part of your character all felt like a space that hadn't been explored as much. And, I was going to have fun doing.
Yeah, I mean, that was, for me, that was the big, you are your car, right? That got me excited about the game from the first line. And, when I explain it to people, one of the things I say is there's been a lot of post-apocalyptic games. But the post-apocalypse is the least important part of Thunder Road, right? This game is the same game if you are goblins riding mammoths or aliens in dune buggies, right? Because at the end of the day, like the especially the board game is based around, it's about racing. It's about getting to the finish line in a way that none of these other games are about. And when you guys started to give me information, I started to see rules and stuff that were, hey, this is about driving a car, right? And it's about Brett, you said something that Robin said to you about, keeping it crazy. The other part of it I love is it's about getting crazy, right? How insane can I get? And I think mechanically, I've been really impressed that you guys took polymorph and found ways to be like, how do we use it to ramp up intensity? It's easy to do cinematic feel, but keeping it getting crazier as a driving force, pun totally intended.
Yeah, so I have some experience adapting other properties to role-playing games. Usually, they're properties that I had no hand in creating in the first place.
Right.
But there's really a lot of it with polymorph that clicked pretty much right away, especially when I was like, oh, the one side of the die is the key, and then it's like, wait, the keys. That's
right.
That totally tracks here. And the big thing for me was, there's a lot of games where if you do the wild stunt, it's like, well, it's going to be at a disadvantage and maybe not as good. And, some players will plow through anyway because it's the really cool thing they want to do. And my vision was like, no, we really want you all the time to be doing things that in other games would give you a penalty, but the more awesome they are, and like in the board game, if you're on fire, it can be incredibly awesome for you until you explode. And that was kind of the same feel that I wanted for all the action scenes in the RPG.
Yeah,
so it really did fit that well.
That is that's an interesting way of looking at it, and we don't think about that. But like in a comic book or on the movie screen, the most ridiculous over the top thing can happen because it's the best story, and it's very uncommon in any kind of simulation game to get that right. It's almost always the correct choice to do the basic or the standard action. But I love the fact that it's like rules as written. You're doing a thing, and it's like, well, if what you're doing is going to slow you down or stop you, this fails. If what you're doing is going completely insane, then that succeeds. And actually getting a chance to play it with people and to sit down, and I've gotten to play it. I've got to play a lot of play tests online. I got to play some play tests at Origins and Gen Con, and like saying that to people, it's been a fun watch game set one player type who is like, the reason I chose to come and play this game is because I want that over the top, complete insane action, and 100% buys into that idea. And then you have player type 2 that's like, even though you're telling them, no, you want to do the craziest thing, they're still like, I don't know, I'm going to slow down. Okay. Seems like a bad idea to me. You sure you want to slow down?
That's part of why polymorph was a good fit. Because definitely, you look at an RPG system that is all about narration, and it's not, there's the games where you can't really look at your character sheet to tell you what to do. It's all in narration. And then there's the games where like the rules are on your sheet and you're like picking from a list of what you want to do. And then a lot of games in between, obviously. And with polymorph, what I've been telling people in playtests is like, if you're the person who wants to improvise, crazy stuff all the time and, go careening off of, cliffs and ramps and everything else, and you pick one of the smaller dice where that kind of thing comes up a lot, you're the cycle or the doom buggy, and that's more your style. But the bigger dice you go up, the less it comes up. So if you really just want to be like, okay, I'm the tank and I don't have to worry about it too often, I'm not rolling, my pedal all that often or my key, so it's not that big a deal because I'm rolling a D10. So we do give people that kind of range of experiences because of how polymorph works. But ultimately, the rules as designed are encouraging you to go over the top and not, you know, not play it safe, not slow down.
Right. The default good idea is to do the dumb thing.
Mm-hmm.
We like to track it back. But again, that role, what is it that you want to do in the game is what Polymorph's all about, right? The four roles and the ideas. And, I don't think there's a big difference between wanting to play the wizard or wanting to play the murder bike, right? Like, you want to do big over the top ridiculous things. That's why you're doing that role. It's what you're taking on. Whereas if you want to drive a big truck or you want to be a guy in a whole lot of armor, it's because you just want to walk slowly forward and make sure that people get alive, get out of it, right? So thinking about it that way is what got me originally super excited about the game. But now that I've played it and done it, it actually really works. So let's talk about some. What are some ideas or some concepts from the board game that you were excited or surprised about how you implemented it in the game in the RPG?
Yeah, so we talked about kind of how the helicopter story came about, kind of explaining some of the things that were there, which led to some other decisions about, yeah, this is, the Sky Clan, and, they believe this, and every crew wants to make sure that it has a helicopter because you don't want to be the one crew without a helicopter. That means playing by the Sky Clan's rules, and, what does that mean? And kind of sketching that kind of thing out. Similarly, kind of asking the question of, there are these big races. That's what the board game is all about. Both, why are those races important? What are you doing with them? What are the rewards of it? But also, what are the things you can do that aren't races, that do open things up? The latest board game expansion removes the race element and makes it arena combat. And so that's, again, another thing that you can pull into the RPG is another thing to do. But then also, what are some ways that we can break the mold in other missions? One of the things that we had tossed around as a board game expansion was like a scenario book that could be like, capture the tanker full of fuel. Again, an original thing that's never been done anywhere else. Or, assault the Citadel kind of stuff. And, probably too complicated to really make it into a base board game, but like an ideal role-playing game scenario.
I have a group of friends that are of an age or a little older than me, and I introduced them to Thunder Road, and their first thing playing it was, man, I really wish that I knew more about what was going on as a story. And I was like, oh, that's good, because we're making a role playing game, so we can do that in the future. But the first thing that people really got into me teaching them about it was the idea of the cars are you're the car, and trying to take actions in the game as the car. Can you talk a little bit about what that looked like when you guys were doing that from a design perspective?
Yeah, so, it's a role-playing game, and you're generally not going to say, you can't get out of the car because of reasons, so it's like you have to represent both of those, but you still, this is a game about road war, and so, the majority of the setup and the world building that goes into it and the rules are going to be about, being in those cars. And so, a lot of the customization, when you're designing your player character, you have both like, okay, what's your style, what's your substance, but also, the primary choices you're making are the attachments to your car itself. How can they be upgraded? What makes them special? What's their look? If you name both your character and your car, those are both important things. And so kind of putting the spotlight there, I think, makes that pretty important.
Yeah, I love the name of the car and the fact that I make a difference between who the player in the car is, but at the same time, we're the same thing. I love trying to get people to really like to lean into that when they're playing. You know, not necessarily to speak in the third person, but to talk about me and the Vindicator are coming to get you. Like that kind of. And I always that's what I do when I'm GMing it, so that people see that, and usually you get what you give. People pick up on that right away.
And then when you're running the game and you're running, one of the scenario, like a chase or a race or something along those lines, if you're doing like, uh, when you're calling on people to go, calling them by the car's name and not your name because it's the car's action, right? And,
Right, it's the car's action.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the first thing I do. I make sure that I write everything down, and I write down the cars and the people so that I can line them up. I get that functionality doesn't exist in the board game, but I wish it did. I wish the cars had different names. So
Yeah, the base versions of the names are taken from the original board game.
right.
And that were kind of carried through. One of the things that we had put in the prototype is we had names for all the different crews. The different colors had different names to them, and that ended up kind of going away for a number of good reasons. But this is an opportunity to both, kind of bring that idea back.
Yeah, I like the fact that it's simple. It's so simple in the game. I don't need to explain that to people. I don't need to do it in the board game. And when I'm teaching people the board game, one of the things I always think is really funny is I don't teach it. I set it up and then we just start playing.
That tends to be my way to teach it too. I think, Brett, when you teach it, you give a little bit more in depth, I think. But
yeah, I try to go a little bit more in depth in my teach, but I probably shouldn't.
it varies.
The first round gets everybody pretty familiar with the slam dice, and then from there on, you slowly learn add the combat or the shooting dice, and then that's all you need, really.
Yeah, I like to tell people, this is the first round. There's no shooting. Don't worry about it. And for some people, that's fine. And for some people, like, no, I need to know how shooting works so I can take my first turn and
so I can take my preparatory actions.
Right.
I taught my nephews how to play, and I didn't say anything about shooting. And we got through the first round, and then I said, "All right, now your guns are active and you can shoot each other." And their eyes lit up like, "Oh, this is the best thing ever." Because now they're brothers, so all they want to do is murder each other. Right? So I won that game very easily. But the idea that you got these teams in the wasteland and you're doing some stuff. What about I liked in the manuscript that you guys have put together about like how you've done some stuff. Talk about the decisions around what the apocalypse looks like you made.
Yeah, Brett, do you want to take that one? Because you had been doing a bunch of research.
The apocalypse looks like whatever you want your apocalypse to look like, but it's obviously heavily inspired by Mad Max. And anybody who's a longtime Mad Max fan knows that it started out kind of early. There was civilization in the first movie, and then as it went on, it got continuously more uncivilized, let's say, and things just kept getting wilder and weirder. So I think in the game, you know it's it's inspired by Mad Max, with that Fury Road, because the board game is heavily influenced by Fury Road, um, with the different warlords who are kind of controlling their factions and kind of jostling amongst themselves for primacy and so on, and everybody is kind of um, in the service of a strong man, and I think in the game, that's one possible scenario for your settlement. But there's other ways you can build your apocalypse in the game. Um, you can be fleeing from that sort of situation, and trying to set up your own little settlement, in a more egalitarian sort of way. Apocalyptic egalitarianism. That's my new political platform.
Apocalyptic egalitarianism. It's good.
It's
It's also a sartorial fashion decision.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, I mean, you can kind of take inspiration from any number of media. Obviously that's where it all comes from. I recently read Roger Zelazny's Damnation Alley, which is often credited as being one of the first post-apocalyptic novels, and it was a really interesting book, and it was very influential on a lot of writers over the years.
Did you watch the movie?
I did actually screen that in my driveway cinema this summer, and it's very different from the book.
Yeah.
Yeah, I prefer the book, but the movie is a lot of cheesy fun. If you like giant scorpions, badly badly CGI'd scorpion fights and stuff like that, it's really fun.
I'm a big fan of the book. I'm a big fan of Roger's last name. That Damnation
Yeah,
Alley, early 1970s, I guess, post environmental, he was thinking
yeah,
about
yeah,
stuff, like, and it's, it has way more to do with Blade, like, the book. It's like the book, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep versus the movie Blade Runner. Like, the
right,
differences are that big. Um,
yeah,
but they made that movie, and that movie was super influential because it set the, uh, set the idea for what Mad Max and everything else was going to be like. Um,
oh yeah, for sure. With the big vehicle, the big rig in that one. I forget what they called it. What do they call that? The
uh,
the the truck with the triple tires on each side.
yeah, what is it called? Someone just recently sold it.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
I was a car guy with enough money to buy cars and do stuff like that.
Uh,
Maybe looking
it was
at
called the
some of these.
Landmaster.
The Landmaster. That's right.
Yes.
That's right. Uh,
Uh, the
yeah. So I mean,
Landmaster, a 12-wheeled amphibious articulated vehicle.
right, because it bends in
Uh,
the middle. You can drive around corners in that thing.
yes, yes. It's and actually it's the core of it is an amphibious APC, a military vehicle. Um, uh, yeah, there's a whole Wikipedia page about it.
Oh yeah. And that's one of
Uh,
those movies where they actually built built the thing. Like in 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 the um, in the Mad Max world, Fury Road, they built all those cars and all those trucks and all the the war rig and everything. Those are actually real working vehicle props and stuff. And this is Damnation Alley was one of the first ones that did that. They built this big crazy Land Cruiser vehicle, and it was reportedly it was kind of terrible to actually drive anywhere.
It cost $350,000 to build in
Yeah.
1976.
Yeah, which is half the budget of the movie probably.
Oh yeah, it's definitely more than Mad Max cost.
Yes, for sure.
Um,
Yeah, I mean, there's tons and tons of that kind of thing you can draw from to create your own apocalypse. But there's the Fallout series, and if you want a more, I don't want to say friendly apocalypse, but it's more infrastructure left, right?
what was the what's the one? They just made a TV show of it. It's another vehicular.
Oh,
Twisted Metal.
Twisted Metal,
yeah.
right? Twisted Metal.
Yeah, I watched that as research too.
Yep, I watched that as well. The killer clown guy in there, I think, was possibly somewhat of an inspiration for Bumpo in the board game. What's the clown's name in Twisted Metal?
Sweet Tooth.
Sweet Tooth, right. I don't know if he's actually an inspiration for Bumpo in the board game, but I like to believe he was.
I mean, your apocalypse isn't complete without a killer clown, really. So
yeah, I mean, until you have some clowns. I mean, we all know that when the apocalypse comes, the vehicular apocalypse comes, that the Juggalos are going to do fine. Like, they're ready.
finally, our vast stores of Fago will last us for as long as we need to.
As long as they need.
Friends.
I mean, the first thing they'll do is take over the Fago production,
right?
And rule from the Fago plant.
Those are allies. I like them.
Wait, no magnets allowed. I don't know how that work.
Yeah, I mean, as a role playing game, it's really funny. The kind of the 9th level core is we want to give you tools so that you can go and you can make something and you can do the game that you want to make. Where a lot of people are looking for more prescriptive. This is the world. This is the thing. These are the 5, and it's just kind of counter to the narrative goals here. You can make that.
Mm-hmm.
So I was really excited that is the direction that we went with.
Well, I think that really echoes what you find in mazes as well, in the setting parts of mazes when you're looking at it, because mazes is basically post-apocalyptic as well. It's just the apocalypse was during the Middle Ages or medieval times.
Yeah, our City of Skull game coming out is literally post-apocalyptic fantasy, but the apocalypse was a thaumaturgic, war, right?
So, and a lot of that intro is, maybe it was wizards who had a big battle and killed the world, and maybe it was a giant meteor falling from the sky, or maybe it was gods fighting, or maybe it was this. Nobody really knows for sure, but whatever happened, it was bad. Now.
Yeah, in fact, actually, in my Mazes book, speaking of wizards fighting, I have a diagram from frequent collaborator Patrick Clapp, and it's a flow chart. It says, "Did a wizard do it? Yes or no?" And then it says, if no, it says then a dragon did it. And if it did a wizard do it, yes. And then it said a wizard did it. And then it said, but actually, a dragon did it. So, which is what Trick thinks all of Mazes is. Did a wizard do it? Actually, a dragon did it. Yeah, I think that the fact that there's room in this game to do a lot of different things, but if you just want to put in your mind the board game, you totally can, and you can sit down with the boards, put your little pieces down, and you can use them as counters and a track, and that that's going to do great. But if you want to go big and you want to go and do something super insane, the game's there for you. I'm really excited. So
yeah, I mean it's technically a licensed game, but it's like very little has been established on the board game side anyway.
Oh yeah.
Even less than like Dark Tower.
Well,
Mhm.
So
Dark Tower was really fun when we were doing that design because I think Restoration Games just kind of assumed what we wanted to do is write a lot of lore and Justin at Restoration. He was working on a novel at the time and doing some stuff, and my first thing to him was, "Oh, we don't do lore. Lore's not like what we do, right? Like, we want to create situations for you to make lore. If I make lore, I'm just creating an opportunity for you to be wrong at the table, right? Like, I want to create. Did you ever see the movie The Commitments
no.
about the Irish soul band?
Yeah.
Right?
That had Tom Hanks, right?
No, that's the thing you do.
Oh,
The
right.
Commitments was it's a band about an Irish guy who puts together a soul band in the 1990s. And there's this great bit in there where the guy's trying to explain what the difference between jazz and soul music is. And he's like, jazz is, freedom, but soul's got corners.
Mm.
And that's how I think of all of this, right? It's corners. We're giving you corners. We're giving you shape that you can
Right.
make it easy to tell stories and do these things. But you can go anywhere. You could do anything. It's not just jazz. Jazz is writing a novel, right? Throw anything out the window. There are corners. It's just that all those corners are there to make it familiar and easy and to get to the core. And what we found through this exploration is that the core of Thunder Road is go really fast and always choose to make the craziest possible decision. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so I worked on like a Marvel RPG, a Firefly RPG, and all this other stuff where there was a lot of established stuff out there, and people were excited to play those characters. Great, but there's also a certain preciousness to that comes with it.
oh yeah,
And this is a game where like, no, we're putting Bumpo the Clown in there so that either you can shoot him, be him, or invent an elaborate backstory / origin story. Like whatever you want to do is fine because who can he's like one piece of art on one crew leader in the board game, and that's all the info we have.
right. If
So
we write 24 pages of backstory, now all of a sudden you need to know who Bumpo is.
yeah,
If you write
and
3 lines, it's like well, Bumpo killed my dad, and that's
right.
why we, they fought with foam hammers to the death, and that's why
And,
I've built this drag racer.
oh, the Umbumpinator, yeah. Yeah,
Uh,
and we do have that kind of thing in the book where we're giving you a paragraph about who these different characters are, who these locations are, but they're so eminently like that's just their. If you're trying to come up with like, okay, who do I get ammo from? Like you can flip to the Bullet King and that kind of thing, and that's there if you need it, but yeah, none of it is required lore in any way, shape, or form. It's just there to help game masters and players kind of springboard off.
Yeah.
Almost as if they were like pieces in a game.
oh man, it's getting deep.
So I think it's good for like creating like set pieces too. If you want to like come up with a cool idea for a post-apocalyptic city, there's just do it. We have one of the examples we have in there is a city built on a stranded cargo ship in the middle of the desert, and it's run by the captain, and I think that's just like an interesting, cool visual. This game is really about having these cool visuals, coming up with these cool visuals to really make the world feel neat and real.
Or like me telling you that your favorite like highway rest stop should be one of these
Absolutely.
post-apocalyptic enclaves.
Belvedere Oasis is the best oasis.
That's the Oasis, yeah.
Yeah, so that would be what the Frank S. Farley stop on the Atlantic City Expressway, halfway between Philadelphia and Atlantic City. The last place to go to the bathroom when you've made a bad decision in Philadelphia. Hey guys, we could go to Atlantic City. It's only 2 a.m. I love that idea. So now I want to see the Water World Thunder Road, Water World Vendetta.
I mean, I've definitely thought about that. You could have water boards and not actually waterboarding, but you could easily make like a water world version of Thunder Road.
Oh, right, yeah. I mean, it's you got a cigarette boat, you got a speedboat, up to like a tanker ship.
It just makes me think of like turning the Waterworld stunt show Universal into
the Thunder Road Vendetta stunt show.
Right. Oh, that too.
I would 100% watch the Thunder Road Vendetta stunt show.
Apparently, there's a Fast and Furious one that makes some questionable choices, but is a fun car show, and so that's another source of inspiration, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, so when you first came to us with this idea, I had said to you that we had been working on a game, and it was in our design file called Fast Cars and Fireballs, which was fantasy Fast and the Furious, right? And I actually love how the mechanics of Thunder Road could, like, with just a little bit of tinkering, you could get to a pretty good Fast and the Furious game. But that was the first game. That was the thing. Like, hearing Vin Diesel describe the characters as characters in an RPG, and then starting to think about, like, how the cars, all the action takes place, all the real action takes place in a car, right? Like, if it's the opposite of every other movie. Like, they stop and they talk instead of having a conversation in a car, which is what every other movie does. Like, they're on the road, and then they do the real action, and the real action takes place in the car. I love that idea that you could just do Thunder Road. That's Fast Cars and Fireballs. All right, I had an idea. I have to put that one aside. I have to go talk to Heather about it. So, all right. Well, we're coming up to the end of this time. Dave, what is your favorite thing so far about the RPG?
I love how many ways dice can explode and what that means.
Right.
And, the live stream game you ran where basically the damage against myself exploded multiple times. That was pretty satisfying.
I have really enjoyed when people are like, oh, and dice explode, and by that I mean they actually explode. So, Brett, what has been your favorite thing about the game so far?
Really, it's just like kind of imagining all of the, like, getting to play in this space a little bit more. Because I'm a big Mad Max fan, and in this genre in general, like translating just translating the board game into this world, and then just kind of like, just you know, dreaming about stuff, daydreaming about different scenarios and different ideas, and I'm just looking forward to being able to play around in this world. Just kind of making up our own stories, creating our own gang or crew leaders, and yeah, I think that's been the most fun for me right now. Is just kind of imagining the possibilities.
And for me, I think the thing that I have been most excited about this game from the very beginning is how excited people get when I tell them about it. Everybody is
Mm.
dying for this game. Ninth Level's super excited about, it's going to be our primary. It's our big release next year. And um, we've been doing big setups at our booths at conventions where we do, dungeon setups for mazes and the whole 9 yards. And we're going to do all that, but we're going to do it for Thunder Road. So excited to paint some Matchbox cars. And put out some cool dwarven forge terrain so that we can have cars jumping over it, and everything's going to be really, really rad. Really excited. It's been super fun working with you guys. Thanks for coming out tonight
Yes,
and talking to the people. We're gonna put this up on the YouTube, and we'll have it on the Kickstarter campaign page. The campaign's doing great. We're really excited about it, and more to come. Knocking off stretch goals left and right. Have a couple of new ones that will be popping next week, and the following week as we get close to the end here. Thank you guys for being on the show or on this conversation. For those of you that have listened, thanks a lot. And we'll talk to you all later.